Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Thursday, and all of our guests are brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. Big game in Kamloops tonight.
Big one.
Western Hockey League. Blazers down 2-1 to Seattle. Winnipeg has moved on to the Western Hockey League
That's
final.
right.
Giants would like to thank their fans for their support this season at the LEC and can't wait to welcome them back for the 2023-2024 season. Get your season tickets for next year now at vancouvergiants.com/season tickets. Joined now by Farhan Lalji from TSN. You covered the NFL draft.
Yep. CFL draft.
Hosting the CFL draft in Toronto. Busy guy, but he's made time for us. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm disappointed that Ryan Henderson didn't put up a picture of Don Taylor Stadium.
Oh,
I visited
What
Don
happened?
Taylor Stadium.
Can you show the tweet?
Yeah.
So I'm in Vegas. I'm in Vegas at my son's 7-on-7 tournament. We're in Vegas. We're at a place called Basic Academy in Henderson. You would think that a Don Taylor Stadium would be at a place called Basic Academy.
Yeah.
But you're no nonsense, simple, get in the corner,
stress the
grinding out
fundamentals.
third line winger guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was fun. Yeah, it was. But as soon as I saw that, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, I try to keep that secret. But seriously, who is this guy? Who is Don Taylor?
You'd have to look it up. Remember there was a Don Taylor that used to play for the Lions, number 19?
Of course, number 19.
Of course we
Back in the early 80s?
Yeah, absolutely.
Redhead?
Yeah. And Don Taylor, if you look it up, I believe was also director of the first Planet of the Apes. A proud moment for those of us named Don Taylor. Love the bucket hat, by the way, Farhan. Before we talk about the NFL and the CFL, the latest on SFU's football program.
Well, the latest is we're still waiting for a decision from the judge. We filed for an injunction that went to court. The arguments were heard on Monday. I was out of town, so I didn't get a chance to go, but I know the courtroom was fairly full with a lot of SFU players and parents and stakeholders. And it's going to take some time, but, we would imagine by the end of the week or early next week, we're going to get a decision. Now, as I've said many times, for us, that's not going to be the start of the finish, right? If we win the injunction, there's still a process to go through where we can get long-term buy-in from the university to bring the program back and not just do it on a short-term basis. And you still got to work with them and all of those types of things. Unlikely they would appeal, but they could. And even if we lose, we've still got other remedies that we want to pursue because we're not willing to let this go quite yet. But certainly a momentous point in the battle will be the ruling from the judge on the temporary injunction. That's going to matter a lot. And you have to believe that the university is just trying to wait and they think that'll make it all go away. But if they haven't learned from our group by now, they haven't been paying attention.
Well, all the best with that, Farhan. You know how we feel about it. NFL draft, you're in Kansas City. So let's talk about what Seattle did in the first round. At number 5, Devin Witherspoon, defensive back. At number 20, Jackson Smith-Njigba, a wide receiver. You weren't a fan of the first choice, if I've got that right, Farhan.
Yeah, look, and I guess that it was so important for them to make that pick at 5 because they haven't picked that high before in the Schneider-Carroll era. So I really felt they needed to address a need. And quite often, look, it's always the big debate, right? Best player available or positional need. Mm-hmm. And the best players available, there were some pretty good ones still available at 5, and they had a massive need along the defensive line. Obviously, they had some concerns about Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from the University of Georgia, but he goes a few picks later to Philadelphia, and that's an organization that also does its due diligence, right? And they wanted to pick him at 9, and then, maybe they had some concerns about the foot of Tyree Wilson, the edge defender there, but he got taken a couple picks later by Vegas. So they passed on 2 pretty special guys. There were some other guys like Miles Murphy from Clemson and a few other places that were first-round grade guys that maybe you trade down and get some value to still address your need, but also get some value with some picks. But they just decided to take the best player available. Now, I'm not criticizing Devin Witherspoon. I think he was an exceptional player. I think he's the best corner available. And you can make a case for him being a top 7 or an 8 selection. So I don't know that they reached, but they picked some corners last year and they improved in the secondary last year. So for me, if they didn't necessarily get to address the need, if it was me, I would have traded. As far as Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20, a lot of teams had tied Seattle to JSN, and he is an exceptional player, right? The draft has been very receiver heavy the previous 2 years. I think there were 23 receivers taken in the first 2 rounds of the 21 and 22 drafts, and 6 and 7 in the first round, respectively. So here, you don't get the top receiver until Seattle takes one at 20, which starts to run of 4 receivers taken at that point. But Smith and Jigba, they've been trying to find a number 3 receiver for them for a long time to complement Metcalf and Lockett, and they've tried to do it later in the draft or in free agency, and they just haven't been able to do it. This kid can't miss. So not only will he be your 3rd receiver, but within a couple of years, he probably elevates above Tyler Lockett to be your number 2 receiver, but you still wind up with, 3 guys that you can hit with a number of different areas of the field and targets. It made them a lot better offensively. Geno Smith's in a much better place to go there.
So far as CFL teams got to watch the NFL draft to see who got drafted, who not. Canadians, and the BC Lions took 6 out of their 7 picks on defense. Why so many on D?
Well, I think they need more Canadian depth on that side of the ball, right? Because you've got, up front right now, you've got Ben Haladic and Bo Lacombo in the linebacking core, and then you've got David Menard and Matthew Betts at defensive line. So, they haven't been able to really get a Canadian impact D lineman in a while, like really not since Brent Johnson in terms of guys that they drafted. So they drafted Nathan Cherry last year. Didn't work out great in terms of immediate impact. I think they still have some belief that they can get something there. But, they need more defensively, right? Because if you can get more, now you can play more Canadian receivers. You're not obligated to necessarily you can play more American receivers. You're not forced to play more Canadian linemen than you want, right? The more you can build on D, the more flexible you are on offense with your ratio. So right now, I don't think they want to start both Lacombo and Haladic. I think Haladic probably starts and Lacombo becomes a rotational guy, with Josh Woods being a key piece at linebacker there. Defensively, on the edges, Betts was good. Menard's not getting any younger. Lacombo's not getting any younger. So you've got to try to work in and get those next guys. So they got Francis Bemi, who many people had as the number 1 player could be taken, right? I know Dwayne Ford thought he was a viable candidate to go number 1 overall. And, the fact that the Lions were able to get him at 9 was really, really impressive. And then in the second round, they get Simran Bagayogo, who's a really long defensive back that's fairly new to the game. He didn't start till he was 16 years old. So he's got incredible length, athleticism, and coverage skills. But in the CFL, you're a Canadian DB, teams play more zone. So he's got to get better at his tackling. But just in terms of pure athleticism and upside, there's a lot there. So he's just got to show that he's prepared to be more physical. He's a soccer player that transitioned to football later in his life. So that's going to take a minute to get figured out. But again, players that had higher grades that the Lions were able to get lower, so a big win for Neil McAvoy and Rick Campbell and Ryan Rigmaiden.
All right, CFL season is upon us. It's not far away. Give us a preview of the top teams. Use your Grey Cup pick.
Wow. I still think Winnipeg is the class of the West, right? Can the Lions compete with them? I don't think Winnipeg is going to get any better this year than they were a year ago, and I think that gap is closing. For the Lions, I think they can compete for that second spot again. A lot's going to depend on Vernon Adams, right? And I've said to you guys before that, I've talked to Vernon a lot this offseason, and the focus and rededication he's shown to his craft. Not that he's ever not been dedicated, but it's different because there's times when, you sign the first big contract and now you kind of look ahead, right, to different things, and, maybe you feel comfortable and, maybe you start thinking about what you're going to do later. And, Vernon is so rededicated himself this year to being in the best physical and mental shape he can be in, that I think he's going to have a really good year. So if that happens, I think the Lions have got some good pieces everywhere else. Calgary will be right there. I think Edmonton is going to be better. They've improved their receiving core. Taylor Cornelius is going to be better. They addressed some defensive needs in the draft. So I think they'll be better. Saskatchewan, still a lot of questions around them. And in the East, you look at Toronto and you feel at 11-7, they kind of came out of nowhere to beat Winnipeg. And maybe that final week of the year, they did pull off an upset. But when you look at that roster and when you look at the Canadians on that roster, you'd be hard-pressed to find a team with better Canadians top to bottom, not just your 7 starters, but even your depth guys, than the Toronto Argos. So what's Chad Kelly going to do there, right? Can he be that guy? But for me, the team I like in the East, you're gonna laugh, it's the Ottawa Redblacks. And I say that because, in my opinion, if Jeremiah Masoli's healthy, Ottawa's got the best quarterback in the East. Wow. Sorry, right? People aren't going to like me saying that, but in my opinion, if he's healthy, Ottawa's got the best quarterback in the East. They've made some important additions, including Drew Desjardins on the offensive line. They're my dark horse pick in the East, but I still think Toronto's going to be right there near the top. But again, let's see what Chad Kelly can do.
Okay, so very quickly, Farhan, I have to ask you this. You just brought up the Red Blacks. I have to ask you about the player picked first overall the other day in the CFL draft because he's from
Dante Bull, yeah.
Because he's from Victoria, and that's where our bosses are. So we want to keep them happy. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Hey, well, the top 2 offensive linemen in the draft were taken from Victoria, right? You've got Dante Bull, who played at Belmont High School for my good friend Alexis Sansegrin, and that's a up and coming building program there. And I was disappointed I didn't get to do the interview with Dante because I was going to ask him who his favorite coach was to coach against when he was in high school. Mm-hmm. But he's a player that I've stayed in touch with since his high school days, and big 6'7", 320-pound guy that has really good footwork and can be a starting tackle in this league. Still dealing with a leg injury. He might not be ready week 1, but very early in the season he's going to be fully ready and able to go. And I think he can do some great things in Ottawa. They got him in Ottawa for their draft party, got him signed and sealed right then. So some clarity there. So that's a good thing. And then Phil Gorovic from Mount Douglas, which you guys know has been a powerhouse program here in British Columbia. So your bosses in Victoria should like hearing Mount Douglas because, they're generally in contention for the BC High School Championship. So those 2 guys were the top offensive linemen. And Phil's more of a guard, more of a physical, nasty run blocker who's still got to work on his pass protection. Not that he can't do it, but his collegiate team at Western Ontario very much run heavy. But certainly BC well represented along the offensive line with those 2 guys, both talented players who are going to have long CFL careers.
Man, you like football. I said 10 seconds are left. I think the show's over now, Farhan.
I didn't hear the 10-second part. Look, every time I come on, I check in with Henderson. He's like, "Oh, we're in the break now, and it's 10:18 or 10:21 or whatever." You're always behind.
Hey, the Don Taylor football stadium or whatever it's called, there. Look at Don Taylor Stadium. It's for an educator and a principal. Longtime principal at that school, Don Taylor. That's why they named it the Don Taylor Stadium.
Yeah, and Farhan, I'm looking at the stadium. It looks a little thin on top.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, but that's just me.
The sign, you can hardly read the sign. They got to put some color in there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'll talk to Don.
It's nice. Your name is on the scoreboard as well. And it's a brand new turf field that they just got, so it's a good stadium.
You guys can laugh if you want. Is there a Farhan Lalji stadium anywhere? Come on.
Yeah.
This is a big moment for Don Taylor.
There should be a Farhan Lalji at NWSS Stadium right there. Yeah.
Do it. Put it. Just get it out there. Put it up for the politicians, Rick.
Just a matter of time.
Right
Farhan,
co-sponsored by Rick Dollywell's Hawaiian shirts and crown.
Yeah. Let's get on it.
That's his domain. Farhan, thanks for this.
All right, see you guys.